Hey everyone, Kane here, and in this one, we're gonna talk about top 5 mistakes that people make while PvPing or trying to PvP in Duel Tower or in general. So, the first and the biggest mistake is copying formations. I've said multiple times, and no, I'm not like calling this person out in particular, I have to specify it, but I've seen this formation on like a total of 5 people in the last one day that I've checked. So I fought him, then I had one of the people whom I spoke to show this like almost exact version of this formation, just minus this one hero move just a little bit back. And then I decided to check the dual tower replays, and I found a couple of these formations as well. Literally exact same stuff, minus a couple of heroes move. So I have to now a little bit stress what happens when you copy people's formations, because also some people whom I spoke to just said, "Oh yeah, don't worry, I'll just copy someone else's formation and I will, I guess, do a bit better." And no, it doesn't work like that. It really doesn't work like that. And I like really want to tell you it does not work like that. There are a lot of things that come to making a formation. Those things include dragon, those things include proper heroes, those things include buffs, debuffs that you carry on your field. They include prism setups, artifact setups, reliquary, again, dragon abilities. A lot of things come into play. Now, even armory will come into the equation. Mine is like, again, hero mask, like so much stuff comes down into a formation that if you just copy it, and you may not understand why the people are using such a formation, what they're doing to make it tankier, what they're doing to make it proper, and stuff like that. So even this particular formation, which I kind of noticed on quite a few people, that they make a pretty huge mistake. So the way this formation is set up in terms of the stall side, right? So a couple of people, I'm not meaning this person in particular, I'm meaning other replays that I have checked that those people have made mistakes. There are two main artifacts in terms of defense, that's Valkyrie's Banner and Astrarian Fati. So those people buff like Valkyrie's Banner the first two squads here, and then use, let's say, Astrarian Fati somewhere on this side to buff this one squad, right? And that is pretty bad. And I do mean incredibly bad. In like in a sort of this formation, you can use Astrarian Fati on this side, and then perhaps maybe use Valkyrie's Banner somewhere on here or on here, so it would touch two squads. So then it would touch, or rather, two buffs would touch one squad, and then this particular Swordman squad would be extra tanky, right? Instead of all of these three just carrying one buff as it is. And now, quite a lot of people do make that mistake, and a lot of things again come down to making formations. And even if you copy the formation, your Valkyrie's Banner can end up being on friggin' like Mako or Talk, and Talk wouldn't even touch these. I've seen multiples or even Astrarian Fatis on Talks or a lot of other stuff, right? So copying formations will never be good. You would have to still waste hours, and I do mean waste, and I do mean hours, to set up properly, rather properly, to have a good formation. Now, the second thing, we're gonna touch on buffs and debuffs. So, let me just quickly show you in terms of this fight. So we go on to the fight, right? Do you see how many buffs I have on my stall side? This is just a couple of artifacts. I'm not entirely sure what the hell this blue shield is. I kind of forgot actually. I think they changed Astrarian Fati perhaps. I usually play the low graphics, so I'm not entirely sure what the shield is. Again, pretty much think it's Astrarian Fati, but don't call me out. This is Valkyrie's Banner, right, on 3 squads, and this is Astrarian Fati. Do you see that it overlaps on two of these squads, and for the next, I think, like 25 seconds, basically these two squads have two buffs which carry over in terms of tanking the enemy burst side. So these just have a Stradrian fighting. This has two buffs, one buff, two buffs, and this one usually runs further into the burst side and ends up tanking some damage as well if I'm even facing a burst side per se. So there are nuances like that which by copying formation you will end up not adjusting, and this is what makes some of the frontline incredibly tanky, plus like a lot of many other buffs, debuffs, and whatever you may place. So again, do keep that in mind. Don't do that in terms of copying, I mean. Then we have to talk about burst and stall side, right? Because quite a few people may not understand what it means a burst and what it means a stall side. So we're gonna use the same thing, but in terms of my formation. So cut my field in half, right? This is a stall side. This is a burst side. Burst side has to contain a DPS heroes and has to contain an immense, and I do mean like immense, a lot, like tens of debuffs, if not more, for your army and your DPS to bypass the enemy quicker, faster, harder, and whatever way you want to call that, right? And I do mean a lot, and I do mean you have to. There is no other, oh wait, I didn't have place. You have to have them. Otherwise, if you miss like 1, 2, 3, you're not gonna bypass a pretty good stall side. So again, like, it is not an option for you not to have them. If you don't have them, you're not gonna bypass. Now, the heroes that I have on my burst side. So we're gonna use this as an option 4 because we're talking about heroes in general now. So Bane is on my, I guess, burst side, right? So I have Bane with Fearsome Aura. He doesn't survive long, but he instantly runs forward, and he somewhat, I guess, increases the damage my Nora does to the enemy frontline in front of Bane. My Valerie should, in theory, increase the damage taken as well, but it really depends because this one says damage taken by surrounded enemies, and then melee damage inflicts weakened armor, which you likely could expect that it affects physical damage. So then something like Nora would do a little bit more, but excuse me, but not Valerie. So I have Helgard, which has 4-star damage suffered by nearby enemy units plus 20%. So this also increases the damage done. That's already one hero with 2 debuffs already on himself. Then, of course, I have a couple of others. I have Solaris on my burst side. So I don't have like a Drake 2 set to make him a bit tankier, so this is what I currently have on him. Like, this is far from being pretty tanky or good, but the main thing about his equipment is the Hex Skull Girdle. Now, probably a lot of people don't use that because they say it only removes 50%. Now, let me just point it out. If, let's say, a frontline army has, say, 200% healing received, right? This will take off 50% of that healing received, or rather 50% from the total value. So it would be from 200 to 150. So that's 50% of the healing received on that army you would have to care less for or do damage to remove. And if they have like Azure Dragons, they have Warmaker's Main, they have like a lot of other things, you remove quite a lot of healing and quite a lot of damage that you may need to do again to actually lower that squad to 0 or invincibility or whatever. You have to realize that even a simple of like a trinket like this can have pretty decent effects of even bypassing the enemy stall side. Might not be as useful against a burst side, but if you do happen to face stall sides, this is actually pretty freaking good. At least in my own opinion, Of course, people can, prove me wrong or whatever, but this is what I used. Then, of course, you have Hydrastic Conch. Quite a lot of people don't manage to use this properly or use it at a site that you don't even do damage on, basically like a center of the map. Basically, you have to use this on your burst side, a side that you do a lot of damage to or you want to bypass to. So basically, my Solaris lasts 10 seconds. This also lasts even if the hero dies. And what it says is it does the tide in front of the hero at the start of the battle, reduces healing received by enemies in the area by 10%. Now, do keep in mind it still goes forward. Every some seconds or 15, the conch emits another pulse, further reducing healing received by 5%, stacks 8 times. So this is 40%, this is 10. Even on 1 star, the maximum is 50%, another 50%. So it also says when enemy heroes die within the tide, the conch emits its own pulse, which can mean it stacks 8 times, so you can stack it a lot quicker than friggin' waiting like 2 minutes to bypass. And a stall side also has heroes. They have Balrog, they have other gladiators, paladins, even some sages in the backline. So do keep in mind, if you do have a burst side and you do happen to kill enemy heroes, this is gonna make you bypass stall side again quicker. Then, of course, you upgrade it, you increase the healing effect reduction or whatever, and the 5-star would then still do damage while the pulses do proc or whatever. So it becomes even more and more effective as you upgrade it. So that is what I mean. People are not even using this one properly, and then they're having harder time to clear stall sites. So basically this one, right, at 3-star, for example, if I'm facing human, this also reduces morale boost, I would assume, because this is morale decay speed. Essentially, this would work on countering the morale boost, but I think this could even end the morale boost a little bit quicker. Even says during which time morale boost will immediately end, right? So if a swordsman squad would enter morale boost, Varian would have like a 50% damage taken reduced buff, and this just ends it quickly or instantly, right? So they lose that tankiness. So a simple artifact like this can counter so much, can reduce so much healing, and a lot of people don't even use it properly. Again, I have to say this multiple times because, again, like, I don't understand how do people miss this particular thing not being on the burst side. This is not the only artifact which does, let's say, pretty huge things in terms of tankiness, debuffing, damage. This is just one of those things which I kind of wanted to touch, which people make a decent amount of mistakes on. Now, the other point is in the same mistake, which is, again, still number 4, is DPS heroes on burst side. Right now we're talking about burst side. Quite a lot of people cannot optimize heroes properly to do damage. So you have let's say, as again I said, buffers, debuffers, you have then DPS, and etc, etc. So even if you would have proper buffers, debuffers, then you don't have proper DPS, you're still not gonna bypass the enemy frontline. And having proper DPS would lead to your hero mastery also being properly set up. And not only hero mastery right now, you would have to set up even your reliquary properly. And yes, even reliquary. I have talked about reliquary friggin' in every single video, and even people failed to do that. Have to set it up properly so your army is tankier, your heroes are tankier. Your heroes do more damage in terms of either attack speed, crit value, whichever type of hero you use, buffs, debuffs, healing received, like a lot. There is a lot that comes down to making a formation right now that just copying straight up can make it a lot worse for you. So for example, I see a lot of people who run mages or have seen quite a few, right? Here, hero magic upgrade. People don't have this particular buff and they run mages to their highest extent. Like, they ran like Nora, or rather, their mages do the most damage on their field, and they have level 70 rogues and mechanists, and because they have level 70 rogues and mechanists, they have this increases hero physical damage. But even then, level 65 mages out damage his rogues, his mechanists. So why are you even focusing rogues if your mages are so decked out that if you would swap your research, you would swap this, your mages would go friggin' bonkers, man. Like there are nuances like that that some people don't particularly know, I guess, or have knowledge of, that some heroes are better in, let's say, early game, some heroes are better in very late game, and then you have mages who just explode everything pretty much from early to mid, probably slightly climbing towards late game PvP, depending on formations and stuff like that. And personally, for me, mages just explode everything. So yeah, you have to remember that a lot comes down into making your mages OP, and I do mean a lot. Basically, hero mastery you have to set up properly, and we can just touch on one of them. So let's touch on Avril. So, Avril, Arcane 8, Magic plus 20. Any magic damage dealt, burn the target for some seconds, which is equal to 9% of target's max HP. So even people selecting this expect this hero to do damage, and know this hero will not do damage if you don't set up your reliquary properly. Sure, it will still burn, she will still do damage, but the damage won't be huge or as quick. So there are a couple of builds in terms of Avril. For me, I play on Android, I have huge lag, so I cannot play Clash of Fate set because she's CC'd and then killed. And then I'm not entirely sure whether or not optimizing these three items in terms of similar like Valerie, right? Whether or not they would perform better on her. So I just use this as like the basic stuff, and it just proves to be working nicely, at least for me. So you have to set it up so she would be able to do damage. Again, reliquary, hero mastery, artifact, which she does magic damage plus 30%, which again would buff the Arcane 8. Then mana ability damage will buff her own damage on the spell. Then you have the Prism, which is increases attack, so increases overall damage, both the Arcane 8 and her own magic damage. And then you have, upon casting an ability, increases attack by 50% for 15 seconds, can stack. So I cast I cast Valerie, Avril, Rufio, Avril. So in the first 10 seconds, my Avril has 100% attack stacked, and the Arcane 8 plus her own magic damage does a pretty decent amount of damage. Of course, if I face a burst side of the enemy, I use Raxius into Avril, into Rufio, into Avril. So she still has the same thing, but I use different things. So yeah, this is how you set her up. Of course, abilities play a huge part, potential play a huge part. Of course, even a skin plays a huge part, as well as her attack value. Like, a lot comes into making your burst side overpower. So if you don't have buffers which will buff their damage with particular artifacts, prisms, equipment, all that kind of stuff, you're not gonna perform good. And if you don't have damage, etc., on them properly set up, you're still not gonna do damage. So everything has to play according to what you build, what you plan on, what you lack, what enemy has too much of that you can reduce. All of this you have to think about while making the formation and making it possible. And the last thing is, of course, dragons. How can people fail with dragons? And it doesn't really come down to failing with dragons, more like the difference in formations, and of course draconic talents. Now, quite a lot of people think like these talents huge, or rather mean a lot. Sure, they can mean a pretty decent amount. Like, some of these say like friendly heroes attack 70%, some of these say health, some of these say 35, and whatever and whatever. I faced even maxed out dragons, I faced even people with all of these tier 4. Probably it does something, probably it buffs them, probably makes them powerful, but A lot of those people don't have proper setup stuff. So this shouldn't be like your main course of action to just overbuff your dragon or just buy everything to boost your dragon or whatever. These are good buffs, but if you don't have DPS, if you don't have proper setups, your dragon is just gonna die and you won't do anything regardless. I even have my dragon frontline and he doesn't die because my burst side just explodes everything. So yeah, do keep that in mind. So, have abilities, Blessed Arcane Blessing, I have Corrosive Scales, Magic Swell, and Aura Blast. And why did I mention all these four? So, if you have Arcane Blessing, right? You cast Aura Blast every single dragon attack. So he doesn't even do a basic attack. It's literally Aura Blast all the time. And now Aura Blast does damage taken 15% plus 20% on, I guess, level 100. So that's 35. Every time the dragon does blessed, or rather Aura Blast, every attack due to Arcane Blessing, he procs Magic Swell. Magic Swell reduces magic resistance of enemies struck by 15%. So that's another debuff that the dragon carries. And then the dragon also has Corrosive Scales. Increases damage taken by nearby enemies by 20%. So do you see how many debuffs my dragon alone carries versus the enemy? Now we have to go back and check how my dragon is placed so you would understand better. So my dragon is placed in the front line in front of my burst squad. And I think prior to Armory, my dragon was dying a couple of times or a decent portion of times, but not like 50%. And with Armory, with like high damage taken reductions, my dragon just doesn't die unless my burst side fails. So basically, my burst side heroes would fall or start falling, and then the dragon dies. Now he doesn't even die. So do you see how many debuffs I already have just literally in front of my burst side? And of course some buffs in terms of placement of these heroes and artifacts and etc. Like I have so much that I can just easily bypass the enemy stall sides or have a decent, I suppose, try at their burst side. Now, I've seen something on this person's dragon, which we also have to touch. Now, again, this is not like calling the person out or whatever. From what I've heard, this is what most people do. So, this guy has an Azure Dragon with Noble Blood, then Greaters in terms of defense, buffing, then buffing frontline archers, then debuffing, I suppose, the enemy or doing some damage and reducing attack speed or whatever this does. Then Aura Blast, and then Hero Predation, and that's it. So basically, he doesn't have Arcane Blessing. That means the dragon does Aura Blast, then Basic Attack, then Aura Blast. So there is a cooldown in terms of the Aura Blast. Then what happens is his dragon is placed right here. So his heroes will not have an easy time bypassing the stall side because the dragon is damaging this skeleton squad with the 35% damage taken, and then you have an archer squad just firing at this squad as well. So basically this type of a burst side is left on its own unless the dragon, swings sideways, which doesn't really happen the majority of the time. Sure, you have Avril, sure you have Valerie, but then it still doesn't do incredible amounts of damage on the side you want to pincer from. And since again I have like a lot of skeletons here, if this squad dies, it doesn't really matter since they will then turn like to the left away from my burst side to then kill those two squads, which is better for me. So a formation like this is not good just because again of a type of dragon per se, right? This dragon is decent. I'm not saying it's bad, but I'm saying the debuffs on this dragon are non-existent. He just has utility to buff the field, buff the healing, buff its own survivability, even has all tier 4. And yeah, just literally utility in terms of his own field and no debuffs whatsoever. And even like this one just procs every now and then. And that is a lot of debuffs lost from the field, which can sometimes make people like me beat like 16 million cores or even higher cores or whatever. And that's how I kind of reached that spot. So again, there are a lot of nuances in the formation, and if people don't optimize properly, people like me who focus on the mages will always rise above and above and above. So yeah, those are the things. It's not up to, let's say, the people in terms of failing on some of those dragons, right? It's not that they wanted to fail on those dragons, it's that they had some other stuff or didn't have proper stuff or was trying other stuff. And just not having a few particular things can remove, again, as I said before, a lot of DPS or possible DPS from your field, and then you have a harder time to bypass a stall side. I have probably all debuffs and buffs that I can clear a stall side. Not sure, there are still some premium artifacts which I didn't upgrade, but I will probably have a look into them in the future. But yeah, that's, I suppose, pretty much it. Probably like a 20-minute video or so. But that is like the main issues that I have currently noticed in terms of people not making prior formations or failing in terms of PvP. So, to keep in mind, if these like sort of insights were useful to you, if they helped you out, and if they did, do hit that subscribe button. It would help me out a lot. Thanks for watching, guys. Take care and stay safe out there.